Okay, so what we're going to cover today is we're going to take a look at 3 different projects that basically are dealing with reading files, inserting new rows, and deleting rows. So we're doing the CRUD operations except for updating. We're going to wait to do updates until next week because they tend to be a little bit more complicated. And the textbook author in the projects that are in the book, they did not include the updates, so I wrote them. So we do have updates, but we're going to cover those next week. So what we're going to be doing today are actually the easier applications or interfaces for the CRUD applications. And we're going to be looking at a subscription list, an address book, and a discussion forum. And you can kind of use these as templates for your final project. So you're going to have to do a final project that has at least 2 tables, and you are going to have to use all of the CRUD operations. So I did provide the code for you for the 3 applications that we are going to be looking at. So they're the same 3 that are in the book. The difference is I added a Bootstrap menu system to them, and I also created the update scripts, which we're going to cover next week. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the first one, which is a simple mailing list. And this is not something that you should use as a basis for your final project because you can see it only has 1 table and you guys need to have at least 2. So we're going to go through this first because it's a little simpler, and then we're going to move into the address book, which has like 6 tables. So it's much more complicated. And I have not created the database yet in my test environment. So I thought it might be helpful for some people to see that. So I actually installed Laragon on this computer I'm using right now. So I'm going to launch the database. And then I'm going to come over, oops, wrong one. And I'm going to run my script. All right, so it should be there now. And I'm going to go ahead and launch the web because I want to show you what this looks like before we actually look at the code. So these are all of the little files that are in this subscription system. And you'll notice that I did include the text or the SQL text for the database, so you can actually copy and paste it right from there. And here's my menu. So this is really simple. We can subscribe to the list, we can unsubscribe from the list, and we can view the subscribers. So super simple. So you just put your email address in, and it says subscribe. So now I'm signed up, and you can see me in the list. Let me add somebody else. So now I've got 2 people, and I'm going to unsubscribe myself. And now I just have 1 person. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of how it works. And if I try to unsubscribe myself again, it's telling me it couldn't find my address. So it can handle that too. And then if I try to resubscribe, so let's say if I'm Freddie and I don't know that I'm subscribed, Hopefully I can type. It tells me I've already subscribed. So it's handling the different weird little things that users like to do. So we're going to look at some of the code for that. So you saw how we created the database. And these are all commands that you guys are familiar with. So in our subscription list, we have a file called connect include. And this file is pulled in to the code that subscribes and unsubscribes, and it's also pulled into the select user code where you can view everybody. And basically what this code does, there's a little function called do database. This do database is the function that actually connects to the database. And then there's an email checker. And because this whole system is based on email, so it's basically checking to see if the email address is there or not. In our do database function, you'll notice that right now I have it set up for the test environment. Okay, and you can tell it's the test environment because my username is root. Okay, below that, I actually commented out the connection for production. Now my actual production connection looks almost just like this, but where it says your username, I have my username in there. So you guys will need to put your username in there. And your username is your NMC username. Okay, and then where it says your password, this is your FTP password for this class. Okay, and then it's Lisa Ballback _ and then the name of the database. And in this case, the name of the database is subscription. Okay, so what you're going to have is very similar. And what I do is I have the two connection lines. And depending on which environment I'm in, if I'm in the test environment, I comment out the production one. If I've tested everything and it looks good, then I comment out my test connection and I remove the comments from the production one. Okay, so I basically keep both of them in here. That way I don't have to remember what my different usernames and passwords are. I just keep them in there and switch back and forth. A couple things to note about this script. We do have some global variables because we're pulling the include into other files. If we make the variables global, that means the other files have access to those variables. Okay, so we've got a global variable here, and we have a couple of global variables here. And this manage file, it's called manage. This is pulling in that connect include that we just looked at. And when it initially displays, it is this. Okay, so this is the manage file. So when it first displays, it displays a form. Okay, and this is the code that is going to display the form. So it's checking here. It says if it hasn't posted. So if something posts, that means they hit submit. So if the user hasn't submitted anything, then it hasn't posted. If it hasn't posted, we have to display the form. Okay, so the code for displaying the form, you'll notice this is pretty much straight HTML. And you may be thinking, how can we do that in PHP? There is something called a here doc that allows you to enter HTML as is. Okay, so to use the here doc, you have to use 3 angle brackets, and then you have to give it some kind of text that it can recognize as the end of the block. Okay, so to me, end of block makes a lot of sense for the text. Now, it doesn't have to be end of block. It can be whatever you want it to be, okay? But we just kind of use the convention end of block. So here we've got end of block. All of this is straight HTML. So you'll notice we've got double quotes, just like you would type in any web page. And then here's the end of the block. So the HTML is in between. So if you use a here doc, you can key in straight HTML. Now you can't key in HTML mixed with PHP. It's not going to let you do that. But in instances where you got to throw out a form and it's all HTML, the here doc is what you should use because it'll make your life way easier. So this gets displayed, and that is if they haven't submitted. Now, when they fill in the email and they submit, okay, they're either going to choose subscribe or unsubscribe, okay? And if we look up here in the HTML, you can see that PHP is using name. Okay, so it's using action, and action is going to have a value of either sub or unsub. So once they submit the form, it's going to run through this code. And it's first checking to make sure it posted. Well, it should have, okay? And then it's also checking to see if the action is equal to sub, which means subscribe, okay? And then later on, we're checking to see if it's unsub, okay? But right now, if it is sub, they want to subscribe to the mailing list. So then we come down here, we double check email, because if that's blank, there's no way we can subscribe them, and we just are going to redisplay that form, okay? If it's not blank, then we do the database connection, and we call the email checker. So it's going to go retrieve, or it's going to go look for the email address to see if it's there. Now, if they're subscribing, we're going to assume that the email address is not there, right? Because why else would they want to subscribe? So we're checking to see if the number of rows that were retrieved is less than 1. If they want to subscribe, we would assume it is less than 1. Okay, so we're checking to see if it's less than 1. If that is true, okay, then we are releasing the results of our query because we know we have to insert. And then we format our insert into command. So we're going to insert into subscribers. The column we're inserting is email. And the value is the safe email. Now, where did that safe email come from? That came from up here. This is where it retrieved the email, cleaned it up, and stored it. Okay, so here we've got our safe email, and then here's where it's actually sending the command. So here's our connection string, which again, it got from our include. Here's our add command, and it's passing that on to the server to execute. If there's a problem, it runs this code, the error code. Otherwise, it's going to retrieve a result. And we have just a little display about block, thanks for signing up, and then we close. So that was all if they indicated that they wanted to subscribe, okay? And then it checked to see if it was less than 1, it added, then we get down to the else. So if it's not less than 1, that means the user is in there. So we just tell them you've already subscribed. Now, what happens if we want to unsubscribe? So all this code was for somebody who wanted to subscribe. If they want to unsubscribe, it's going to run through this. So here's we have our else. It's checking to see if it posted, and now it's checking to see if the action is unsubscribe. So it's checking the email, because if they want to unsubscribe, they need to enter the email. If they haven't put the email in there, we have to redirect them to the form because they have to enter that, okay? As long as they've entered the email, we do the database connection, we check for that email address, clean it up, and then we check to see if the email address was in fact there. If it was not there, so if the number of rows is less than 1, that means the email address wasn't there. Okay, well, we're going to free up the resources, and then we're going to tell them, hey, we couldn't find your address. Okay. Else, well, this means the email address was there. Okay. And so we're going to retrieve the row associated with that email address. We're going to grab the ID and store it. And then we format our delete. And in the where clause, we have ID equal to the ID that we retrieved. Okay. And so we send that command with our connection string to the server. And then we display a little message that you're unsubscribed. And finally, we close our connection. At the bottom, this is where the display block is shown, but you'll notice that above and below, we have some includes. So the begin nav include is one that I added. And it includes all of the Bootstrap for the background image and for this menu bar. It's got the Bootstrap up to the opening section tag that this display block displays inside. Okay, so that's all part of the begin nav. And then the display block is shown. So it's either going to be the form or a little message that they've subscribed or unsubscribed. Okay, and then the ending nav, all it does is it closes off the section, and then there's an end body and an end HTML. Okay, so that is pretty much the manage code. Okay, and everything I just explained to you is re-explained down here. The subscription zip file is located here, and you are going to want to right click. Chrome is acting weird if you left click on it, so make sure you right click and save it directly to your drive. Then view subscribers is the only thing that we haven't looked at. And for the view subscribers, you kind of saw how that works, right? It just lists the people that have subscribed to the mailing list. And so we do our connection include, and then we do the do database, which makes that connection for us. And you'll notice that I included the begin nav. And then at the bottom, I've got the end nav. And then in between, it's going to actually display the email addresses. So you can see the begin nav, that's giving me my navigation menu, the background image, all that fun stuff. I do a select everything from subscribers. I send the connection string and my query to the database. And then I actually take the results and convert them into a little array. And then I subscript in, grab the ID, grab the email, and then you can see I've got a little styling here for color. And this is the formatting to display that little email address message. Okay, then I close out, and then I finish off my HTML code. Anybody have any questions about that? Let me see if I'm going to have to open up the chat here. You guys all good?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay. I will quick show you the nav stuff. It's very similar for address book and subscription. Okay, so you can see I just did the echo with the single quote, and then it's just all straight HTML. Okay, and then I've got the ending single quote way down here. But this is the navigation bar. I've got, you know, references to the different libraries, the viewports in here. Okay, so this is responsive. I've got the little hamburger in here so that if we decided to, you know, this was going to go mobile, it should display the little hamburger, and then you click and you get the menu. Okay, and then the end nav is just finishing it off. That's all it does. It's not a whole lot of code in there. Okay, so it's just closing the section, the body, and the HTML. And it's very similar in all of the different applications. I would say the main difference in the applications is the CSS that I put in there. And so this one, I called it City Blues. And I actually think you can see it right here. So I just do a little different background image and different colors, okay, in this one, but this is all straight CSS. So you guys are pretty used to seeing this. So if you compare the CSS in the different applications, you'll just notice they're a little different color schemes and graphics. So we're going to move on to the more complicated example, which is the address book. So the address book has several tables. And the way this works is the master name table has an ID. And you'll notice it's auto increment. And it has a date. And it has a first name and a last name. Okay, and that's all it has in it. Date added, date modified, first name, last name. And that ID then has been put in all of the other tables. And so when you put the primary key from one table into other tables, it becomes a foreign key. And in the other tables, it is called master ID. So the way that we're going to find related records is we're going to be looking for that master ID. And the rule is that one name, one person, can have multiple addresses, they can have multiple telephone numbers, they can have multiple fax numbers, they can have multiple emails, but we're only going to let them have one set of personal notes. So everything is a one-to-many except for personal notes. And you'll notice that personal notes, we're also connecting using the master ID. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. Okay, it looks like it worked. And I'm going to run the address book so you can see it. Let me see, I should probably not have closed that. And here's the menu. Okay, so this has got a little different color scheme. And I bet you that there's probably not anything in there. So here we've got add entry. And so first and last name is really the only thing from this form that's going to go into that master table. The date added, the date modified, those are kind of preset in the code. Okay, and we're going to take a look at the code for this. So the menu that we were looking at, it's pretty much a straight menu. There's nothing real special about it. Okay, it's done in Bootstrap, so it pretty much displays the same thing. This is similar to what your final project menu is going to look like. You are going to have an add entry, change entry, a delete entry. You're either going to create an XML or a JSON contact list, and then you're going to view either one. And then you're also going to allow them to select records. Okay, so this is going to be very similar to what you're going to have to do. And what we're working on this week is the add, the delete, and the view. Next week, we're going to learn about the change. And then after break, we get into the XML and JSON. Okay, just so you kind of get the big picture in your head. So for the add, you'll notice that we have a connect include. This looks very similar to the one that we had for subscriptions. The difference is that obviously we're not going to be doing, actually I think you can see it here. Very simple. All we're doing is connecting. Okay? We're not doing anything else in this one. And I have two different strings, one for testing, one for production. And then basically it just checks to see if the connection worked or not. And if it failed, it's going to print out a little message. Okay, that's all it does. For the menu, where is it? That's actually, that doesn't look very pretty, but you saw what it looked like live. Okay, so it's basically got the different links for the different scripts that we're going to run. And that's all Bootstrap formatted. Okay, so for our add, we pull in the connect and then we check to see if it posted or not. So if it hasn't posted, that means they have not seen the form and we need to display it. So you can see we're doing the here doc again. And then we've got all of the code for the form. And as you saw, that's actually quite a bit of code because it's putting out all of this in that particular script. Okay, so it goes on for quite a ways until we get to the end of the form. And then you can see that we end the here doc block. Okay, so when the script first runs, that is the code that's going to execute. Then they're going to fill in whatever portion, and they don't have to fill in the whole form. So if I just wanted to fill in the first and last name, I can. I don't have to put anything else in unless I want to, okay? So they're going to fill in whatever they want, and then they're going to click the add entry button. Once they click that add entry button, they have posted the form, okay? So that is what else if is checking. Did the form post? So if the form posted, did they fill in the first and the last name? The first and the last name are required, okay? That they have to fill that in. They don't have to fill in anything else, but that has to be filled in because that ID for that particular table is the key for the entire thing because it's being pulled in as a foreign key in all of the other tables. So that table has to be filled in. So if they didn't fill in first and last name, then we redisplay the entry form, okay? If they did fill it in, then we move down to do database where it makes the connection. And then we're cleaning up, we're reading in all of the things from the form. So we got first name and last name and address and city, state, zip, all of that. Reading all that in and cleaning it up and storing it in new variables that we're prefixing with safe. Then we are going to do all of our inserts. So we start by inserting into the master name table. So we have insert into master name. So the ID is auto increment, so we do not fill it in. Okay, and then we fill in date added, date modified, first name and last name. Because we are not specifying the, well, actually here we are. We are specifying values. So here we've got now, which is a function. We've got the safe first name and the safe last name. Okay, so I don't know why that's showing as a gap. When you key those in, or when we look at the scripts, there should not be a gap in there. I'm pretty sure there isn't, because that would actually create some problems in PHP. Let me look. Okay. So yeah, this is how it looks. So in PDF form, it looks a little weird. But this is how it should look. And the files that you download, this is how it is presented. So you can see we're specifying what we're inserting into and the values that we're inserting. And remember from last week, the part that people mess up is this part here, because it's a little bit weird. You have single quotes, and then inside you have the double quote dot. So basically you're concatenating a double quote with the value that's stored in the safe first name, and then you're concatenating a double quote on the end. Okay, so it's kind of weird, and if you miss a quote, it's going to error out, and that is a really hard error to find. So here is our insert into, and then here is where we're connecting and executing that code. Then you can see that we are retrieving the ID. So this little MySQLi command is retrieving the ID that we just inserted and storing it as master ID. So the master ID becomes super important for all of the other tables. We have to have it. It is what connects all of those other tables to the person's name. So we're storing that. And then we're checking to see if the address, city, state, or zip code were posted. So what it's basically doing is it's saying, did they fill in address, city, state, and zip? If they filled in any of them, then we have to insert the row. Okay? And if they didn't fill them in, then we're going to skip it. Okay, so it's checking to see if they filled any of those in. And if they did, then we've got to insert a row into address. So ID is the primary key, and it is auto increment. So we did not include that in here. So we start with the master ID, which connects it to the master name table. And then we've got the date added, date modified, address, city, state, zip code, and type. Okay, and so then you can see how we add all of that. Then we send our query and store the results. And then we basically do the same thing for telephone, fax, and email. We check to see if they're filled in. If it is filled in, then we do an insert into. Okay, we do that for the telephone, we do that for the fax, we do that for the email. Okay, we also do it for note. Okay, so fill that in. And once we get to the bottom, we close out the connection and we add to the display block. So your entry has been added. Okay, and then it spits out the beginning navigation, which in our example is the background image and this entire navigation bar. Then it's going to kind of spit out the display block. So after we fill this in, and I'll go ahead and fill some of this in here. Whoop. Okay, so I filled it in, do an add entry. So after I fill it in, okay, the begin nav is displaying the background and this entire navigation bar. What is in the display block is the add entry text and your entry has been added. Okay, and then it goes through the end nav, which just closes off the section, the HTML, and the body. Okay, so that's pretty much what the ad does. Any questions? Okay, so assuming everybody's good, speak up if you're confused about anything. Okay. So once we've added rows, then we can view them. And that is what select entry does. So with select entry, and actually I think it's probably easier for me to show you this in VS Code because then it doesn't do any weird wrapping. Okay, so we have our connection that it pulls in. Then we call the do database, which makes the connection, and then it checks to see if it's posted. So here is what the select looks like. Okay, and it would display in the dropdown all of the people that are in this address book. Okay, and then you can basically select any of them and hit view selected. But the minute you hit view selected, it has posted. Okay, so what it's checking here is to see if it posted or not. Did they hit the button to submit or not? So if they haven't, then it actually displays select an entry, which you saw, and then you saw the drop-down list. So how it's getting the data for the list is it is selecting the ID and the name from the master name table. And it's basically grabbing all of them. So it's retrieving all of the people that are in the master name table. And you'll notice that it's running last name and first name through a little function. And it's concatenate with separator. And the separator is a comma in a space. So it's going to concatenate the last name and the first name with a comma and a space in between. Okay, and it's storing those as display name. So that is the select that gets sent to the server. The server retrieves all of the rows. Okay, and if there aren't any rows, so that we have nobody in our address book, then it's going to display an error message. But if there are rows, then it has to format the drop-down list. And so what you're seeing in here, this is all part of a display block. We cannot use a here doc for this because we are pulling in some PHP. So we have to put it in a display block, and you know that PHP does not like nested double quotes. So we have a double quote starting it and a double quote ending it. And then in between, we have some double quotes. So before the double quote, we have something called an escape character. And this is the backslash right below your backspace key. But if you put that in front of a double quote, it knows that the double quote goes with the text, and it does not mean that you are at the end of the string. Because normally, because you have a double quote here, if you put one here, it thinks the string is done. But when we escape it, we're saying, no, that double quote is part of the text. It's not the end, okay? So that's when you use the escape characters. And you'll notice that they're all over the place. Now, you might be wondering, I hate doing escape characters. Is there a simpler way to do that? Well, you could use single quotes instead of double quotes, okay? That would work. So keep that in mind when you're doing your own code. But the whole purpose of this is to put together the HTML for the form that is going to display the drop-down list, and it has to display the data that got retrieved from the database. So we have the method set to post. The action is a self post. And then we've got a label for that says select a record. And if we go back out and look, okay, here it says select a record. So that is where that is coming from. Okay, and then here's our select tags, that's HTML. And we're setting an ID, we're setting a name, we're saying it's required. And then we've got options. So the very first option in the drop-down list says select one. Okay. And then below that is where we are getting all of the data from the database. And this is the code that is generating that. So this is our results that we are formatting into an array. And then we subscript in with the ID. We store it. We subscript in with the display name, and we store it. And then we add to our display block the option line, which gives us an entry in the drop-down list. Okay, so if there was 20 people in our address book, then it would zip through this 20 times. Okay, once it's done, then we're adding to the display block, we're closing the select, which ends our drop-down list. We're closing the paragraph, and then we create the button that says view selected entry. Okay, and finally we are closing off the form. Okay, and then we free up our results. So this is all what it does if we have not selected a person and clicked on the view selected entry button. So what if we select the person and hit view selected entry? Okay, then we go to this screen. Okay, so if it posted, okay, then it checks the ID. Well, if the ID is blank, then there's a problem and we need to redisplay the selected entry form. Assuming that it posted it and there's no problems, we grab the ID and we save it. And then we retrieve the master table information. Okay, so we are retrieving the first and last name. And let's see. Then we start configuring the display block showing record 4. And then it displays that formatted first and last name. So if we go back out and look, you can see showing record 4. This is the formatted first and last name. And then it's going to free up the result. Next thing it's going to do is it's got to retrieve the address information. So it is checking the master ID against the safe ID. So remember that the ID that's in our master table, okay, is the master ID in all of the other tables. And that's what we have to check in the where to make sure that we are getting the right address with the right person. Okay, so we're retrieving the address information where the master ID is equal to the safe ID. Okay, and then if the number of rows retrieved is greater than 0, we have an address. Okay, so we need to display it. So here's an address heading, and because they can have more than one address, we actually have to be in a little loop here. So we are retrieving the address, storing it in add info, we're subscripting in and getting the different values, and then we're just formatting our display block. Okay, and we do that for each address that's stored. And then when we're done, we close off the unordered list. And you'll notice we free up the results, and then we do kind of the same thing for the telephone and the fax and the email. So again, we're doing a select on the telephone number where the master ID is equal to the safe ID. If it's greater than 0, that means that they have addresses there. So we display the heading, we get into the little loop and kind of spit out the different phone numbers. And we do the same thing for fax. And we do the same thing for email. Okay, and then for the personal note, we kind of do the same thing, okay? And you'll notice that we actually run this through a little function that adjusts the line spacing in the note. That's what NL2BR does. Okay, and all of this at this point, nothing is showing on the screen because it's all been put into the display block. So by the time we get down here, we've got this display block that's full of stuff we want to see. And we display the top of the navigation bar. Then we display the display block. And then we basically close off our tags down here in the end navigation. Okay, and that is pretty much what it did. So beginning nav shows all of this stuff. Okay, and then this is from the display block, and navigation closes everything out. You guys have any questions? Okay. So delete entry. And I should mention, if you guys are thinking these are complicated, the update is way more complicated. That's why we're saving it for next week. But the delete entry basically has to delete from all the tables. So if you delete the master name, then the addresses have to be deleted, the phone numbers have to be deleted, all of that stuff has to go. So I'm going to open that up and we'll look at it in VS Code. Okay, so I think you guys have the this connection thing down, right? We connect to the database. If it hasn't posted, so they haven't submitted the deletion. And let me show you what the deletion looks like. Okay, so this portion looks kind of the same as the select, right? So it's going to show all of the people in our address book. And then we basically select somebody and we delete them. And that's kind of how it works. So if they've never seen the form, we have to display it. So we just add to the display block here, select an entry for deletion. We do a select, we retrieve the ID, first and last name that we format with a comma between, store it as display name, and we grab that from master name. Send that to the database, get the results. Check the number of rows in the results. If there's less than one row, that means we have nothing in our database, so there is nothing to delete. Okay, we have to have more than one row. So as long as there is at least a row, then it's going to run through else. And this is where it formats that drop-down list. So the way it's doing it here is the exact same as the way that it did it in the select a record. Okay, the only difference, I believe, there's some difference in, I'm thinking some of the IDs, but we'd have to look a little closer. So this does the top of the form. Then this actually gives us each entry in that drop-down list. And then this closes it off. Yeah, I think the difference is actually just down here in the button because we're deleting. So there's a little different value down there. Okay, so that's where we're at right now in walking through this. So I haven't submitted anything. So now if I submit something, it says the record's deleted. Would I like to delete another? Go back to the main menu. So these are just little links. I could also choose things from up here. But if I try to delete another, then it gives me that message that there's nothing to select. And you saw the code that produced that. Okay, because it has nothing to put in the list. There's nothing there. So once you make a selection and you submit it, it's going to run through this code. Okay, if you haven't picked an ID, then it redirects you to the delete page. And if you have picked an ID, then it stores that ID. Okay, and so we delete from the master name where the ID is equal to the safe ID. Execute the command. We delete from the address where the master ID is equal to the safe ID. And you may have multiple addresses here because remember, it's a one-to-many relationship. So you could have 3 different addresses and it's going to delete all 3. Okay, and same with the telephone because it's checking master ID. You might have more than one. Okay, so it's doing that on each one. So if there are multiples, it will remove everything. Okay, and then we close it off, display the little message that the record's deleted. Would you like to delete another? And all of this at this point is in the display block. Nothing has been shown to the user. So we include the beginning navigation, which puts that menu bar and the graphic in there. Then all of the code that we put into display block is shown. And then we end, we do the end navigation, which closes off our HTML tags. Okay, so that is the delete. Okay, and as far as what I modified from the book, I kind of summarized it here. But you could see that I added begin nav and I added end nav. Okay, so we did enhance it a little bit. And this example has quite a few more things that you'll be learning in upcoming weeks. I thought it was better just to give you the whole thing so you could see the big picture, and then we're going to kind of cover the different components. So what we covered in address book is how to add an entry, how to select a record to view, and how to delete an entry. Okay, next week we're going to cover how to change an entry. And once you know how to add, change, and delete, and you know how to select and view, those are the CRUD operations. Okay, so anything beyond that is kind of like icing on the cake. So our icing is going to be creating an XML or a JSON file and then viewing those files. Okay, so that is the address book. You guys have any questions about the address book? Okay, are you ready to move on to the last one? This is going to be the discussion forum. And while we're going through this, you should kind of be thinking about what kind of application you'd like to create for your final project. Because you should either model it after the address book or the discussion forum. Now, it doesn't have to be an address book or a discussion forum, but you can kind of use the pages as models to help you create your own page. And so our discussion forum also has a menu. What happened to my Bootstrap? Just a minute. I wonder if that didn't get in there. Huh. I will have to, I know I put it in there, so I'll have to put a different zipped file out there for you guys so you have it. So the one I wanted to show you actually does have a menu up there. Let me see if I have that. Nope. Let's see. That'd be lesson 12. Okay. I would prefer to show you. If you're thinking, man, that's a lot of stuff to sift through, you're right, it is. Let's see, address book, discussion forum. Whoop. There, that's what I meant for you guys to see. So I am going to definitely fix that download link. Hold off downloading that because this is what it should look like. So for the discussion forum, you're going to have a show topic and reply to topic and an add to topic. And kind of built in here, after you add a topic, you are allowed to edit. So that's where the change comes into play. So for the code, I'm going to actually pull up the code then from a little different location. I'm going to first create it, because here is the code to create. And then we're going to kind of walk through what it does. So here is the menu. And this is the full Bootstrappy menu that you can see right here. Okay, and this is responsive. Okay, you do have the hamburger here, and then it expands. And I actually love this just because my favorite color is orange, so I think this looks super cool. And then we've got the connect, which you guys have already seen. And then we have add topic. So add topic has two files. There's one that kind of displays the form, and then there's one that actually adds to the database. So I am going to pull up the code from where I actually have it stored. All right, we've got add topic. And then we also have something called do add. Okay, so for our add, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and run that. All right, so this is the little form that displays. So it's kind of simple. It's just email address, whatever the topic title is, and then you can post some text. So I put, let's see, favorite movie. All right. So this is the code that throws out that form. So we've got the begin nav, which is our navigation bar. Then we have at the bottom of that file is a section, an opening section. And so then we've got our little echo here on the entire form. And then we have our end nav. Okay, so this was the form I just filled out, and it's all straight HTML. Okay, and you'll notice that when we submit, the action says do add topic. So when we fill this out and we submit it, it goes over into this script. And the first thing I want to point out is that we start a session variable at the top. And you guys should be familiar with that because we did that yeah, a couple weeks ago. Then we have our connection script. We connect to the database. And then we have to make sure that the required fields that were in the form got filled in. So we're saying if the topic owner didn't get filled in, and the topic title or the topic title didn't get filled in, or the post text, if those things, one of those things didn't get filled in, we have to redisplay. And actually, this should be PHP and not HTML. So we'll go ahead and fix that. Okay, so it should redisplay this add topic PHP file. Okay, assuming they all got filled in, then it's going to come down here, and you can see because it did post, okay, it got submitted, it was posted, we're retrieving the owner, the title, and the text, cleaning them up, and we're storing them. Okay, and then we do an insert into forum topics, that's the table, and we're inserting the title, the time, and the owner. Okay, so you can see the code. Then we send the connection string and our query to the database. It gets executed. And the ID is the primary key and it is auto incremented. So this retrieves that and we need to store it. We're storing it as the topic ID. So we take the topic ID and we store it as a session variable. We take the title, we store that. We take the text that was posted and we store that as well. Okay, and then we need to insert into forum posts. And you can see that we have the ID that is associated with this particular topic, the text, the create time, and the owner, the person who originally posted. Okay, then we execute the query, then we close the connection. Okay, my comment says create a nice message for the user. Okay, so you can see I'm actually showing them what their topic title was. And I'm saying that whatever their title was, topic has been created. And then we're allowing them to either edit or delete that topic. So you can see that we've got edit and delete for the values. And then we have a location that we're sending them to. And these are both scripts depending on what they select. So the rule that we created in here is that if you post to the discussion forum, you are allowed to edit your post right away. And you're allowed to delete the post right away. But you cannot edit or delete after people have posted replies. Okay? Because then you would be deleting other people's comments. Okay? So you can do it right away. Otherwise, you can't. Okay? And we're going to actually cover the editing next week. So this is all at this point in the display block. And we've got the begin nav that does that navigation and the lovely orange smoke at the bottom. And then we display the display block, and then we have our end nav that we're including. Okay, so that's all part of the add topic. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add the topic. And you can see I now have the option to edit or delete the post. So this is kind of like a one-time option, right? So if I decide not to edit or delete and I go to show topics, okay, now it's showing me the number of posts and it's showing me my topic. So if I select my topic, shows who did the topic, what the topic is, when it was created, and I can reply to it. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the topic list first. Okay, and let's take a look at that code. So for my topic list, top part is the connection. Okay, I have to gather all the topics. So I'm selecting the topic ID and the topic title. I am formatting the date that it was created. And then I'm retrieving the topic owner. And this is from the forum topics table. And then I'm sorting it by the time it was created in descending order. So the most current ones are going to be up at the top. Send the query to the database, it executes, and then I get the results. So if the results are less than 1, that means there are no topics. Okay, so then we better tell them there are no topics. Otherwise, if it's not less than 1, we have topics. Okay, so then here we get this little here doc again, where I've got a table with Bootstrap formatting. I have a row and I have 2 columns. In the first column, I made the heading topic title. In the second column, the heading is the number of posts. And you guys saw that. Okay, topic title, number of posts. You can tell that I have table hover on this. Okay, it is Bootstrap formatting. Okay, and then the here doc ends. So once I get that part out, then I have to start displaying the rows with the actual data in. So I've displayed the heading, and now I have to display all of the rows with the different topics. So let me add another one so this looks a little bit more interesting. Oh, I'll do one from Scooby. Oops, actually we'll put this down here. All right, so we'll add another one. All right, so now I have 2. So you can see the most current one is up at the top, and I have 2 of them. So what it's doing in this little while loop is it is taking the results from the search, storing them into topic info, which is an array. And then we're subscripting into the array with the topic ID, the topic title, the create time, and the owner. This data is coming directly from the database. We don't need to clean it. It's already clean. But what we are doing is stripping any slashes out of the data, and then we are storing it. Then we do a little count on the post ID because that'll tell us how many posts there are for a particular topic. Okay, so this is the select that counts those IDs. And this is an aggregate query for those of you who have been out of 178 for a while. Then we run that against the database. And this is actually retrieving the number of posts. See, it's got the post count. Then we get into the little here doc display. And this is where it's actually going to display on the screen. As you can see, we've got an opening row and a closing row. And then we have the first column here and the second column. And in the first column, it is displaying a link to the topic. Okay, and then it's showing us the time it was created and who it was created by. Okay, and in the second column, you saw that it does the number of posts. So here's a link to the topic. And then this is when it was created, who it was created by. And then this is the number of posts. So we go in here, we can reply to Scooby. Okay, and you can see that the reply is showing. Let's go back to the screen, and now the number of posts is 2. So we still have the link, and we have the link here. Okay, so that's all this is doing. And then down here, it's freeing up the results, closing the connection. We're adding a closed table to our display block. And then we're basically spitting everything out on the page. So we're giving them the navigation section. We're giving them everything that's in the display block. And then the end nav closes the tags. So, any questions on that? Okay, so what we're going to take a look at is what happens when you click on a topic. So the last screen we were looking at was topic list. When you click a topic, it goes to show topic. So we're going to take a look at that one. So stuff at the top is the same as all the other ones. Okay, so we do our connection. Then we're checking to see, we're checking the topic ID, and if that has not been set, then we have to go back to the topic list because in the reply, the topic ID is important and we have to have one. So then we are retrieving the topic ID, and you'll notice that we're not using post, we're using get. Okay, and so in the form, which I should have probably pointed out, where is it? In the form somewhere, it is using get, or it is not specifying the method. Okay, so if it doesn't specify the method or it specifies it as get, it's going to go into the get array. So here we are retrieving topic ID from get. And get also displays on the address bar. So that's another way you can tell it's a get instead of a post. Post is hidden, okay? It actually goes in the HTTP header. Get, you can actually see. So basically we are retrieving the topic ID, cleaning it and storing it. Then we're verifying that it exists. So we are retrieving the topic title based on the ID. Okay, and sending that to the database. And then we're checking to see if any rows were retrieved. Okay. If there are no rows, then the topic doesn't exist. We give them an error message. And then we have a little link back to the topic list because they need to pick something else. Okay. If there are rows, then the topic exists. And we are going to display it. So we've got the topic title, which we clean up and we store. And then we are again going to the forum posts, and we're retrieving data. So we've got post ID, post text, date, and the owner. And we're checking the topic ID. And we're organizing or sorting by the create time. Sending that to the database. And then we do another little here doc. So it just says showing post 4. And then we've got our little table where it's got author and post. We take the results, store it in post information, and then we retrieve the ID, the text, the create time, the owner, get rid of the slashes. This also puts in some line formatting for the text. And at this point, we've got it stored. And then we've got our display block where we display the owner. We say created on, so it gives it a date, and we display the text. Then at the bottom, we have a little link to reply. And so that is basically what you saw here. Okay, so here's the little link to reply. At this point, after that is all displayed, we can free up our results, close the connection, and then we end up displaying everything. So you can see that I added an end table for the display block. I do the navigation. I do a little heading. I display the display block, and I do the ending navigation. So at this point, we have covered this. We've covered selecting one of these. What we haven't covered is how to do the reply. I think this is the last thing we have to cover. So the reply. Do the connection. We check to see if they submitted a reply. If they did not, then we check to see if there is a post ID. If there is not, we bring them back to the topic list. If there is a post ID, we retrieve it, clean it up, we store it. Then we select the topic ID and the title. You'll notice that we're doing a left join, and we're joining forum posts to forum topics. So a left join is going to display all of the posts, and it's going to display the matching topics. Okay, and we're only doing that where the topic IDs match, or actually, no, we're joining on the topic IDs, and we're filtering based on the post ID. Okay, so this is basically a SQL join statement. Okay, the only difference is we're using variables that we've created in PHP. Let's see, this executes the query, checks to see if we have any rows, and if we don't, it takes them back to the topic listing. Otherwise, we do have rows, and so what it does is it takes the results, converts them into an array, and then it basically subscripts in and stores the ID, and then it stores the title. Begin nav gives us that whole navigation system. Okay, and that's the end of the PHP, at least for this part of the PHP. And at the bottom of begin nav is an opening section. So this is displaying in that section. Okay, so this is post your reply, and you'll notice that we've got the PHP displaying inside. Then after we get to the bottom of the form, we have more PHP. So we pull in end nav, which closes off the section, closes off the body, closes off the HTML. And then we free up our results and we close our connection. Okay, so then it checks to see if it just posted. Okay, so this is all what it does if it hasn't posted yet, if not post. So that's displaying the form. If they filled in the form and they posted, then it's going to run through all of this code. So we'll do that for this one. Actually, I already replied to snacks. We'll reply to movie. All right, so we got our form. Now, what should Scooby's favorite movie be? We'll make it be a scary one right here. All right, so Scooby just filled that in. And it posted, so it's checking to see if the topic ID, the text, the owner were there. If they're not there, it redirects. In our case, it was there. So basically, it kind of cleans it up and stores it. And then it inserts into the forum post table. So it's using the topic ID. So this is the ID associated with the favorite movie. It's taking the text that we replied with and the current date and the owner, which in this case would have been Scooby. And it's inserting all of that into the row. Okay, and then it's closing off the connection. And does a little redirect. So you might not have noticed, so I'll reply to another one. When I submit this, it doesn't come back to this form. It does a redirect to show topic. And that is what this code is doing. Saying the location is show topic, and then it's actually specifying a topic ID. Okay, and then it exits out. So that, I believe, is everything we needed to cover from the discussion forum. We got the add topic, the topic list, the show topic, and the reply. All right. So that was a lot of code to go through. So what do you need to do with all of that? You're going to create your own application, and this is also going to be your final project. So it's an assignment, but it double dips as the final project. So you can create something like the address database or the discussion forum database, similar to what we did in the lecture, or you can do something completely different. Because this is the first time you guys are doing this, I would try to do something similar, just because it'll be a little easier. Now, for those of you that try to do something really easy and just think, I'm just going to copy and use the address book as is, you can't do that. You have to make it your own. So you have to use different columns, different tables. If I was going to do my own address book, I certainly wouldn't have a fax table because we don't use faxes anymore as much. So I would make adjustments to it and kind of make it my own. And as I mentioned, a lot of students choose to do the discussion forum because they're kind of into gaming and they got different hobbies. And then they kind of customize the discussion forum to something they're interested in. Okay. So it's up to you what you want to do. My requirement is that you have at least 2 tables. And there's plenty of code for you guys to look at. You should gear the database for a specific group because that will help you determine what the column should be, what the formatting should look like, what kind of background image you're going to have, that type of thing. So, you know, if you're into sports, you can do it on sports. If you're into charities, you can do it on charities. A lot of students are into gaming, so they pick games. I don't care what you guys do it on. It's totally up to you, okay? So pick kind of a theme, pick an audience, and gear it to that, because that'll make the project easier and it'll make it more fun. So once you have the database, then you're going to create the include files for the Bootstrap navigation menus. And I gave you guys pretty good examples for that. So if you want to do something similar to what I did, that's absolutely fine. But if you like some other Bootstrap layout better and you'd prefer to use that, that's okay too. My only requirement is that it's responsive. I want a responsive format. So you're going to have some kind of Bootstrap formatting, some kind of Bootstrap navigation. You should also have an external CSS file. And so if you do something similar to the address book, these are the types of files that you would need. And I did include the file names here from the address book so you can use them for a reference. And if you do something similar to the discussion forum, these are the kind of files that you would need. And again, I did include the actual names, although this add topic is PHP, not HTML, because I changed it, okay? I will also fix that zip file so that you're getting the one with all the Bootstrap. Then let's see, once you're done, you are going to want to update your assignment page. You need to get this stuff working in the test environment, okay? Get everything working. So you're gonna have to add the database and you're going to have to create those scripts and get all of it working, okay? And all of it at this point just means the add, the select, and the delete. And that's all you have to have working at this point, okay? And then you should run the files offline for me so I can correct them. Like normally I would have come around class and had you do it there. But because we are now in this little virtual world of ours, when we have a lab, you can just share your desktop and quick show me. Basically, you'll show me your menu, you'll do an add, you'll do a select, and then you'll do a delete, okay? Just so I know that it works, and then you'll get all the points, okay? So this is going to double dip as your final project. So once you actually have it working in your test environment, you can give me your scripts and I will put them on the production server. And then I'll tell you what you need to enter to connect, because you'll have to change your connection string. And from that point on, you'll be able to make modifications in the test environment and then transfer them to the server, and everything will be live, okay? For the scripts, if you don't have a copy of your scripts, these steps will take you through how to export the scripts from PHP MyAdmin, okay, or MySQL. So that is the assignment. And for those of you that are thinking, oh boy, that is a lot to get done, take a look at the due date, because it's not due until after spring break. So initially, my plans for spring break were to paint some rooms in my house because I never have time to get anything done. But given our current situation, we're practically in lockdown, I am going to hold office hours because I anticipate a lot of you guys are going to be working on this over spring break. Basically because you aren't going to have a whole lot else to do. So I will post office hours for spring break right before spring break, but I'll do larger chunks of them so that you can come in and get some significant help if you're having trouble. The only other things that you're going to need to do is submit a proposal on what you're going to do for your final project. So, you know, I have in mind what it is that you're doing. So I did put a little overview of the final project here so you could kind of get the big picture, but I've already pretty much explained it to you. So these are all the different components that you're going to have, that you're going to need. The only thing that we haven't talked about was the user login. And we'll get to this in a couple weeks, but basically with this, this is for authentication. And you'll have a little separate table for this. And basically they just key in the username and password, hit login, and it redirects them to your main menu for your final project. And if you were doing like the address book, it would then redirect them to this page. Okay, so that's kind of how the authentication piece works. And that's the only thing that I really did not tell you about ahead of time. Okay, so otherwise, we pretty much talked about everything. We talked about the theme, we talked about the Bootstrap formatting, the external CSS file. I just showed you the authentication login, which honestly is not a big deal. Okay, that will take like 2 seconds for you guys to code. Then the Bootstrap navigation menu, the different things that you have to have in there. And all of them are included in the address book. The discussion forum does not have the generate XML or JSON file or the view XML or JSON file. We will be covering that information after break. I don't think you guys are going to have any trouble incorporating that into the project. You don't have to do both. You only have to do one. Okay. And I like to have you guys do this because, as you know, a lot of companies have developer pages where you interface with their APIs, and their APIs then send you either XML or JSON files. So in this little scenario, it's like you are the company, because you are interfacing with the database and you are creating the XML or JSON file. Okay, just like the large companies do. Okay, so I like to have you guys get that side of it. Let's see. So that's pretty much the final project. And as I said, we are double dipping our assignment with the final project. So as long as you keep up with the assignments and you get those done, you're going to have your final project done. So what you need to have done by the 7th, which is after break, is you're going to have the assignment done, which is kind of the first part of your final project. And you do need to submit a proposal to me. Okay. Next week, you can see I already opened that up. This is also due on the 7th after break. But next week, I am going to show you how to do the updates. So it will not take nearly as long as today. It's much shorter, but it's a little more complicated when you're doing updates. So I like to keep it separate. So Monday, we will be covering updates. And then that'll be at the beginning of class. The end of class, we will have lab. Wednesday, we will have lab the entire period. Okay. So once we cover updates, then you're going to have to incorporate the updates into your project. So that will be what the lab involves. Okay. And because I have given you sample code, you're going to be able to see what those updates look like in a discussion forum and in the address book. Okay. And as I mentioned, I will have some hours over spring break where I can help you. Okay. So anyway, that's what we've kind of got going for the next week and a half. And starting next week, we are back on track with our schedule. So, does anybody have any questions?
No.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video